What's up, friends? Today we are here on the Acedeck Nomad N3, and man, this thing has been a long time coming. I got this board quite a while ago while I was at EskCon, and believe it or not, I'm just now getting the chance to make a riding review on it. Now, first off, today's video is going to be a little different than the ones that I typically put out for the efficiency tests of wheels, and a little different than the ones that I've done. I don't know if I think I did one range test before, but today it's going to be sort of a combination of a riding review and a range test, because I want to get this video out, get you guys some of my opinions on this board, and then take a little bit more time to go into the studio, get some nice B-roll of it, and take it apart and get those scores in there, the performance score and the RBEM score. So today we're going to talk about my experience riding this thing, as well as do the range test for it, see how far it can go. These are always a bit difficult with boards of this caliber because, let's be real, I'm probably going to be riding for quite a while. I'm fully expecting this thing to get at least 25 miles of range, which averaging out to a speed of 15 miles an hour, we end up getting close to 2 hours of riding, if not more, depending on how the stoplights go. So I'm going to talk to you guys today about each part of the board as I'm going on this range test, and you guys will recognize this route if you've watched any of my wheel efficiency tests, because it's the same route that I use for those, and it gives you a nice sort of stable routes to judge the boards by. And this route is about 7 miles long, and it has a hill in the middle of it, so it goes downhill and then uphill again. I'll put the elevation chart on screen, maybe, if I remember, and you guys can see what it looks like. But for the most part, it's generally pretty flat, and then there's that big hill in the middle that gives the boards just a little bit of a challenge. It's also a good way to tell how well the boards do with hills. I know this one is going to do particularly well because it's so powerful, but some of the other boards do struggle to get up that hill at the speed that I want them to. Now, let's talk about the speeds for this range test. The first third of the range test is between 15 and 20 miles an hour. The second third is between 20 and 25, and the final third is again between 15 and 20. And this is what I do for every single board that goes on this test. Just recently I did the range test for the Defiant 1 board. That thing got quite a bit of range. That was almost 30 miles. And hopefully this one will not take me that long, because it's going to get dark. So I'm probably going to have to split this into 2 days. I'll take the board home, let it sit, double check the battery voltage before I go out again, and then finish it on a second day, which honestly, it's not really that big of a deal in my opinion. But today we're going to try to get done 2 loops, I think. Each loop typically takes around 30 minutes, so we'll get this done. Now, like I said, I'm going to give you my opinions on this board, so I want to go through each component. And I have a sort of unique experience with this board. Eric at EskCon was the one that gave me this board, and Oliver kind of helped me get that approved, which was very nice of them. And I was super stoked to review this board because this thing is a beast. 14S6P battery, big old motors, good ratio gear drives, 7-inch tires, comfortable deck, and on top of all that, it looks awesome. Now, after getting it from EskCon, I had 2 things that I was sort of training for, and those were the 2 races that I did recently. One in Phoenix, which there will be a vlog coming out for that soon, and then the other one in Long Beach. So I was spending a lot of time on my race board at practice 2 times a week to prepare for those 2 races. And while preparing for those, if you haven't been to one of the Electrify Expo races from Electrify Race League, you won't know, but there are 3 different classes at these events: stock, modified, and pro. And it just so happened that the N3 fit into the modified class at this event. And the reason for that is because I had Riptide bushings on it, which at the first event were considered a mod class type of change. And it also had the Lin Power 6-inch slicks on it, which are great tires for racing. These on here right now are the 7-inch ones from Acedeck, which are also pretty great. I believe they're made by Hoda. But the Lin Power ones were much better for racing, and you get a little bit more torque with that smaller tire size. Now, the races went pretty well, and you'll see in the vlog, but I ended up getting 3rd place in mod class on this board, which I was super proud of. It was my first podium ever, and it was pretty awesome that I was able to get it on a board like this with TKP Trucks. Now, it did not come without its challenges. I did have to make some pretty big changes from the stock bushings on here, and we are on the stock bushings right now. They're the black stock bushings, not the old white ones, the newer black ones, which I believe are 96A, something like that, and they do not feel nearly as good as Riptide bushings. And I will say, if we're going to start talking about the features of this board, the bushings are definitely a weak point. Now, saying that, I already know that Acedeck is trying to work with Riptide to get a deal, and wow, look at that light. Acedeck is already trying to work with Riptide to get a deal, and hopefully that'll come through before the next version of the Nomad comes out, and you guys will be able to get bushings that are either precisely machined for these trucks or ones that fit properly and are guaranteed to work. Since this is not a typical first ride video for a board like I've done many times, I just started riding in S Plus mode because that's what I'm used to. So I went ahead and switched into L mode, which we're in right now. That gives us 11 miles an hour with a very beginner-friendly soft start. And then it kind of caps out at 11. We can switch it to E mode, which I guess stands for Eco. This start is a little bit more, and it will go all the way up to 25 miles an hour, which interestingly is kind of a big jump. But this board is definitely more intermediate rider focused, I would say. It does come at a higher price point as well, but E mode goes all the way up to 25 miles an hour with an okay amount of acceleration. Then you can switch to S mode, which gets you up to 30 miles an hour. And then you can go to S Plus mode, which is the full unlock speed up to, I believe, 38 miles an hour. Or, well, technically the website says 40. I'm not sure if it'll actually hit 40. Kind of depends on the rider weight, conditions, and stuff like that. Now, the trucks on this board, like I said, are they're traditional Kingpin, and they look absolutely awesome. They are kind of polarizing. If you don't like this hogged out CNC'd aluminum look, maybe you won't like them. I think they look super awesome, and they're definitely a bit different compared to other standard common trucks on Chinese-made boards. Now, they have actually had a recall, not a recall, an upgrade that they've sent out to people for the rear truck. I believe there's someone on Reddit who had his rear truck break. I don't really know the circumstances. Could very well have been user error, but Acedeck ended up improving the part and sending the part out to their buyers. So if you are an Acedeck N3 owner and you want to make sure you get that upgraded rear truck hanger, make sure to give Acedeck support a holler and let them know that you would like to receive that updated part, and I believe they will send it to you free of charge. They did that for me, and I have a review board, so they didn't really have have to look me up in the system. They just told me. So that was really nice and great to see that Acedeck is looking out for their customers. Back to the trucks. TKP is something that I'm still sort of new on. I do find these TKP to be quite different from the N3 TKP, which are the only other TKPs that I've spent a considerable amount of time on. And the N3 ones, I think, are actually a little bit less responsive than these. Neither set of TKPs is particularly responsive. And I find TKPs have a very different turning response than DKP and RKP. They tend to be more dead in the middle. So like not very much deck turn will create a lot of board turn in the middle. And then when you get to the edges, it sort of bottoms out pretty quickly, which can feel a little bit weird when you're trying to make those really hard turns. Now, with the Riptide bushings in here, I was able to do the short track at Electrify Race League Phoenix. It took a lot of effort though, and I'm not really sure that I had my Riptide bushing set up quite right, but going into there with the stock bushings would not have been the easiest task to accomplish. I was able to get some pretty decent times as well with the Riptide bushings, but overall, I mean, really TKPs are not, they're not really race-oriented trucks in my opinion. Honestly, DKPs aren't either. People do tend to do fairly well on DKPs on short track because you don't really need as much of that high speed stability, where these TKPs do have more of that high speed stability but do tend to sacrifice the low speed maneuverability. And this is the constant battle that we're fighting on electric skateboards, is having the right amount of stability and the right amount of maneuverability in the same truck package, and being able to ride that everywhere we want. I don't really personally believe that you need to have your daily board be track rideable. I mean, when you think about it, most people are not riding, or they're not racing their daily driver car on a racetrack. Sure, some do, and sure, you can have a board that is able to do both things, but I'm not sure that TKP is the choice that I would make for that. As a daily though, this thing is great. It provides a decent amount of turnability for a group ride style of riding. If you find yourself riding on a lot of sidewalks, which I don't really recommend, you may have challenges on those 90-degree corners, but overall, the performance has been pretty good in general day-to-day street riding. And I can say the same for my Black Mamba build, which I have a 200-mile ride analysis video coming out on that soon. But for those TKPs, I also feel like they're perfectly fine for daily riding. Realistically, most of the riding I do is more straight line, not as much carving, and a lot of the riding I do is purposeful to get me from home to work and back at least one time a week. That's the goal I typically aim for. So these trucks do perfectly fine for that, and I think most people will be happy with them. But definitely number one thing, get Riptide bushings. You will not regret it. Make sure you pick the right size for your weight and for your riding habits. And that is, for me, I had a really weird setup at Electrify Race League Phoenix. I had a combination of the crank and APS formulas in different hardnesses. I recommend you go with a common hardness and start there, see how it feels. Honestly, the best thing is if you have a friend that has a bunch of Riptide bushings, you can try them out. I did have the Chubbies on here on the board side, and I know some people have said that they don't fit. It seemed like they fit fine to me, but it's definitely easy to over tighten them and squish them. And for Riptide bushings, you really don't want to over tighten them because that is when they lose their effectiveness. And getting the right hardness to not wobble is a much better option than just cranking the bushings down super tight. Now we're going up the hill right now at the middle of the range test, or at the middle of the loop. Board is doing great. I'm honestly barely at like a third throttle, and we're easily able to keep up the 20 miles an hour pace. And that's impressive. I'm not surprised, honestly, but it's still great to see. And we're halfway around this loop, and we're still at full battery. So that should tell you something about how good the battery is in this thing. I foresee this being a very long range test, but it is a 14S6P battery with moly cell P42A. And you know, we started saying that moly cells were like the golden standard in DIY a couple years ago, and they've slowly been filtering into the pre-builts and other Chinese-made boards. They've been in the boutique boards like Hoyt Street boards. They're in the Defiant board, and they just perform really well. They have a good ratio of power to range, and they really give you the oomph that you need to get through the miles. Now, we are at 5.3 miles right now, still at 100% battery. The one nice thing about the Acedeck boards is you can check the voltage on the screen, and I highly doubt you'll be able to see it, but there, you can press the power button to change screen view modes. And we're currently at 56.8 volts. I believe fully charged is 58 point something. Can't remember. 58.4 maybe. So we're down 2 volts. And the other nice thing about these remotes and this ESC combo is that it shows 10 bars on the battery. So you actually get pretty granular amount of estimated range left, which I think is really important. It makes it a lot easier to see and guess how much further you're going to be able to go. So it's probably not linear though, since the discharge curve of lithium-ion batteries is not linear either. So I would expect the lower bars to go a little bit faster than the first couple. So the battery, I'm going to show you guys what the battery looks like a little bit when we do the full review. I'll open up the case, show you how it looks in there. I've opened one of these before. It's really not that interesting to look at because it's all covered in heat shrink and the glass fiber board, which is a good practice, keeps the battery safe in there, but not very pretty to look at, or not very interesting. But I haven't heard people having too many issues with the Acedeck batteries, so that's always good and encouraging. Having battery issues is definitely one of the most annoying things about e-skates because they're the most expensive part, and ironically they're also the most dangerous part. So it's good to see that Acedeck doesn't seem to have too many battery problems. Of course, every manufacturer is going to have battery here and there that doesn't quite meet the standards. I wish they had better QC to weed those things out, but honestly, doing battery QC once it's fully assembled can be a little difficult, so they have to have it worked in through every stage of the building process, and I don't know if we're there yet. But generally from the community, it seems like Acedeck has done pretty well with their battery supplier, so that is great. And if you're able to have that consistent performance for a really long time and get you all those miles, that is great as well. So we are going to keep on trucking here. Talked about the trucks a little bit, talked about the battery a little bit. Now let's talk about the deck. Now I'm going to need to look this up because I don't remember what it's constructed out of. I believe there is a lot of carbon fiber in this deck. I'm not sure if it's 100% or if it's carbon fiber layered over wood, but it's pretty comfortable, and the shape of it is comfortable as well. We sort of have like a wide concave with a tiny, tiny bit of W in the middle, and for me, it feels really nice. Doesn't fatigue my feet, and I was able to get pretty good grip and push off the corners of the concave during the time that I was racing with it. Now, the top is covered with the Acedeck foam grip tape, which I have found to be pretty good. When I was racing, I did have my rear left foot grip tape slide a little bit, but that's a very edge case scenario, and it was also 93 degrees out, so not a really great combination. High heat and high forces will typically make grip tape slip a little bit. So not really a knock there. The grip tape is comfortable and grippy. No complaints at all. They actually did send me another grip tape to put on here for the shots of it, but I haven't put it on yet because this grip tape is still fine, and I figured I'd rather save it for when this grip tape starts to give out. Now I'm getting a little nervous here because we are currently at 6 miles and we're still at full battery. So this thing has really got some beans in it, and I actually have a 14S6P board, which is the Black Mamba board. It's on Esc, so completely different system architecture, and I barely get 20 miles of range with it on my work commute. Now the work commute that I do is pretty tough for e-boards. It's 30 miles an hour pretty much for 10 miles straight uphill. Well, there's some downhill too, but uphill, downhill, it's a pretty stressful route. So not really a fair comparison, but this thing seems like it's going to absolutely whip that. And that I feel like is attributed to the efficiency of the gear drives in combination with the lower powered ESC and the tires. These Hoda tires I have at 35 PSI right now. I made sure to pump them all up to the same thing before I started this test, and they're pretty comfortable. They absorb most of the bumps of the road, and even though we have that carbon hard stiff deck and that metal enclosure case underneath, it's still a comfy ride. And back in the day when carbon boards first came out, a lot of people didn't find them as enjoyable because they push all of the vibrations straight into your feet. And this thing is doing a really good job of absorbing those bumps. So it makes it a much more comfortable ride, and I can guarantee you that after riding 25 miles, my feet are not going to be as sore as they were on the Defiant, which is a urethane board with a similarly stiff deck. So my feet are going to be thanking me, my ankles are going to be thanking me, and I think you will be thanking Acedeck for building something so comfortable. Now, the deck is not usually that interesting to me on boards. My favorite things to look at are range, acceleration, braking, the sort of fun things that you can get numbers out of. And I haven't done the P-Spec score on this board yet. We're going to do that soon, probably this week when I'm recording this. I don't know when this video is coming out yet, but I'll probably do that this week. I did already do some 0 to 20 acceleration tests, and I happened to have a N1, which is the first version of this board that I did them on as well. Pretty much identical performance from 0 to 20. I'm fairly confident that the two boards are going to end up with pretty dang similar performance overall. But the good news is that performance is pretty dang good. You'll have to wait until the full review to see those numbers, unless I decide to make a reel or a short about it, but I'm very happy with it. And I guess teaser, this is the number 3 board, I believe, on my list, with my race board and Black Mamba coming in above it. But it got a 2.06 best 0 to 20 so far on these 7-inch tires. If you end up switching to the Lin Power 6-inch tires, you could probably get that down even more for more aggressive acceleration. But I like to test these in the stock configuration so I can tell you guys what you would be getting if you just bought this board outright. So pretty happy with the performance so far. This ESC is a different ESC than the one that was in the N1. So while the performance ends up being similar, the sort of characteristics of that performance are a little different. And on the N1, the acceleration was just insane. It was very hard to control, super jerky, and honestly, it's pretty easy to knock yourself off the board with it because of how violent it was. The acceleration on this board, surprisingly, like I said, the timing is almost the same, but it's much more controllable and it's much more comfortable to ride it at that sort of acceleration level. I can full throttle it on here and not feel like I'm going to die. It actually took me probably 10 or 15 tries on the N1 to get my best time because I kept backing off before hitting the full throttle. It's always a spicy thing to do with boards I'm testing, is this full throttle testing. You never know if something's going to go wrong, and yeah, it can end pretty badly when you're accelerating full beans, hit 30 miles an hour and get speed wobbles. Fortunately, that has not happened yet, and we're not going to let that happen if I have anything to say about it. So, performance of this board, numbers can wait, but the general summary of the performance of this board is that it's definitely more than most people need, and I think most people are going to be blown away by how well this thing does when it comes to accelerating, braking, and range. So we're just trucking along here. We're at 7.2 miles. The battery indicator is still at 100%. That's obviously wrong because the voltage has dropped, but it's still on the first bar. We checked the voltage, we're down to 56.3 volts, but still at that 100% mark on the indicator. So, like I said, having the 10 bars is nice because as soon as it drops 1 bar, I will know that we have a little bit less range. But it is a little bit baffling to me that we're down 2 whole volts and it hasn't changed yet. But I guess if you divide the voltage range by 10, maybe it doesn't hit until you get 3 volts. I don't know. We'll see. But in any case, it's doing great right now. And I'm going to take a break for a minute and then we'll talk about another thing on this board. All right, so while the light is starting to fade, I wanted to talk about just a little bit more and give you some context for this review again. I have already done over 100 miles on this board, some of which was racing. And so that's why I'm doing this sort of range test review video, because I've already done so much time on here. I feel like I have the ability to give you guys some pretty good opinions on my experience with it. And so let's talk just a little bit more about the powertrain on this thing. At the back of this board, we've got Acedeck's 4.0, oh boy, 4.0 gear drives. These are steel on steel on steel. They're actually 3 gears in a line, I believe. I have to double check that. This might be different than the smaller 3-gear one, but they sound very nice. And Oliver at Acedeck, he claims that they are some of the best gear drives on the market, and I have to say they've done really well so far. They sound really good. They feel super confidence inspiring. They look pretty good. That's obviously subjective, but the performance is there. 4.0 ratio gives you a good balance between top speed and torque. And when you combine that with their custom 6890 150 kV motors, you get the torque that brings this thing to the 2.06 0 to 20 time, which is pretty dang fast. If you didn't get a chance to check out my Acedeck review, by the way, check that out in the iCard. That was a fun little time that I got to spend with Acedeck at EskCon, and I think you guys will find it interesting. Now, I'm actually going to wrap up this video before the range test is over. Well, technically, I'll stop recording the talking bits before it's over. I'll just record a clip at the end after I've gone through the whole thing. It's already very long since this is a review range test, so I don't want to overload y'all with information. But that pretty much covers almost all, I think pretty much all the aspects of this board. We covered the battery, we covered the trucks, we covered the deck a little bit. We got 7-inch tires. Those are pretty self-explanatory. They're comfortable, grippy. The ESC is newer. It's their quote-unquote latest gen, and it's different than the N1, different tuning, seems to be similar performance. But yeah, honestly, I've just been really enjoying this thing, and if you guys are interested in it, be sure to check out the link in the description. I don't really have any affiliate code or anything for it, but I'll put the link in the description so you guys can check it out, and check out another video while you're at it. If you liked this idea of a range test review, be sure to like the video, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. What do you think about the Acedeck N3? Is it a cool board? because I think it is probably one of the best value performance boards of the 2024 board releases. And I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this. A lot of people are going to think it's crazy powerful. It's not quite at DIY level, but it definitely, actually, I should rephrase that. It's not at the top end of DIY level, but this thing will definitely out-accelerate a lot of lower and even mid-tier DIY boards. And that's really saying something, because it's taken years for the Chinese and foreign pre-built manufacturers to get to that level of performance and keep it reliable. So I've got a lot more riding to do, and we have just dropped our first bar of range, and we've gone about 9.7 miles. Our voltage is currently at 55.5 volts. Whether or not that should be equivalent to 1 bar of battery, couldn't tell you. Leaning towards probably not, but I've still got plenty of range in the tank, and I'm looking forward to riding this some more. Feet are feeling pretty comfy at this time, but I got a lot more to go. So anyway, I'm going to leave you guys until the end of the range test, which will probably be tomorrow. And thanks for watching. Alright, I know I said I wasn't going to record anything till the very end, but we're through our second loop, and we're at 13.9 miles. It's still at 80% battery. This thing is ridiculous. It's time to go in because it's getting dark, but I will resume this tomorrow. Alrighty, so we're here on the Acedeck N3, continuing our range test. I just did a whole nother lap. We have now done 3 laps total, and we're at 7.7 miles on this lap, and we are currently at 50% battery. At the end of the last lap, I was at 80% battery. So just this last lap, from 80% down to 50%, where the previous lap was 1 bar each. So like I thought, we're draining a little bit faster at the lower voltage, but I think this will easily do 1 more lap, if not 2. So we're gonna go for another, then we'll go ahead and pick up the spare board to make sure I don't get stranded, and finish it out. Alrighty, we just completed another lap of this range test on the N3. We're now at 14.4 miles this session, and we're at 30% battery. So that additional lap took another 2 bars off. So theoretically, I could do an entire additional lap. I'm probably gonna grab my spare board though, because I don't really trust it. I did some harder pulls at the very end to see how the voltage would sag, and it sagged down to 25%. So we're probably somewhere between 25 and 30. I got the little vibration message on the remote, but I'm very impressed that we've already gone 28 miles and I still have possibly like 7 miles left. It's just crazy, especially because we're on 7-inch pneumatics. Like, you would not expect this kind of performance, especially when you compare it to the Defiant board, which granted is a 12S 5P, way less cells. That only got 30 miles, and that was on urethane. Compare the efficiency of these 7-inch tires, they're on 2 whole different playing fields. So this 14S 6P battery is doing great, and I'm very impressed. Alrighty guys, we're here on day 2 of the Nomad N3 range test, and we're right at the end of this battery. I started my 3rd lap just about a mile ago, and we're down to 2 bars, and I got a 10% battery notification on the remote just a minute ago. So we're almost at the end, and I just wanted to kind of summarize my experience and give some closing remarks of sorts. So first off, this board is definitely more than powerful enough for probably 80% of people, I would say. You're going to have a ton of fun on this thing, and you're going to go really far while doing it. Now, as for the range, you're definitely going to have less range if you're pinning it at 38 miles an hour the whole time. My average over the mileage I've done so far is about 16 miles an hour, which is right where I want it to be in accordance with my testing. And I mean, I haven't been super nice to it while accelerating, but if you do pin it at every single stoplight and stop sign, you will get less range than I got here as well. However, all of that being said, the range is incredibly impressive. Doing 4 loops on any board, that's 7 miles about each, is crazy. So right now we're sitting at 29.5 plus 1.4, so 30.9 miles, and we are down to 1 single bar of range remaining and 47.4 volts on the battery. So I've got my spare board on my back, and I'm definitely going to be switching to it soon. We're going to be coming into the high-speed section in probably about a mile. I think that is where it's going to die. Now, even while it's at such a low battery, I have been able to go still nearly 30 miles an hour. I tried it once just to see. I'm cruising at about 20 right now as per my range test guidelines, and it's holding up pretty well. There's one thing that these Hobbywing ESCs do pretty well, is that even at low battery, nowadays anyway, they manage to sag and they manage to keep you going at a pretty high rate of speed, which is great because if you're on a group ride and you're down to the last bit of your battery, you can still keep up for quite a while. So that's pretty great. One negative thing that I want to talk about just briefly before we conclude this testing video is that the ESC still needs a little bit of work, I think. There's 2 things that I've noticed while riding it. One of them is that the let off of acceleration is laggy. And what I mean by that is if you do a full pin and let off the throttle real quick, it will kind of lag and keep giving it power until probably half a second after you take your thumb off the throttle. Now that is completely opposite of how Vesks work. It's pretty instantaneous, and it's much more predictable that way. You can get used to it, of course, which I have pretty much, but it's still a little bit jarring sometimes if I do a full pin and then let off quickly. It kind of keeps going a little longer than I want it to. So that part of the ESC definitely needs a little bit of work. In addition to that, this is kind of just something I noticed, but when you're riding at a constant speed, it feels a little bit strange. And I'm in the default control mode, which I think is speed control mode. And when you're at a constant speed, holding your finger in the same exact spot, it kind of feels like weirdly locked in. Like if you were to lose traction, something bad might happen. That's completely just off the top of my head. I don't really think anything would actually happen, but it feels a little bit weird when you're going perfectly constant speed. Other than that, it's been pretty great. I really enjoyed my time on the Acedeck N3 on this range test, and I'm excited to record the full review for you guys and give you all my thoughts in the studio-centric video. I'll try to keep that one a little shorter since this one is so long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this style of video. I don't know if I'll do it too often, but due to my timing and schedule, this is what needed to work to get this video out a little bit earlier than the studio one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll put a clip in here at the end of what my final range was. We're still hanging on to that single bar right now, and my guess is we're going to be somewhere around 34 miles, but I'll let you guys know. Thanks for watching, stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out. Alright, that's it. This is the end. We're going 5 miles an hour. My rule is once it gets to 3 miles an hour, the board is dead. And what do you know? We're on the hill. I feel like this happens every time, and you might think that it's unfair that all these boards die while going up a hill. However, every single board gets the same exact treatment, so ain't nobody got really any excuse. So I think we're dead. So that brings us to the end of the Acedeck Nomad N3 range test with a total of 4.9 plus 29.5, which is a number that I'm going to put on the screen because I don't feel like doing mental math. It's over 34 miles, and that is quite impressive. So great job to Acedeck on their range, and here is how it compares to the other range tests that I've done. I'll put it on screen, and You will get all the rest of the technical details in the full review, so make sure to check that out when it comes out. Thanks again for watching.